I should say that this is Tom Harwood, who is here, and also, come on guys, work with me. Who else have we got? Thank you.
Also, I'm Lucy Thomas.
Lucy,
I was the
forgive
Deputy
me.
Director of the Remain campaign.
Forgive me, Lucy. I'm waiting for my autocue to catch up with me. Sorry, guys. Let's reset. Tell me what's going to happen in the Palace of Westminster this afternoon.
So there's going to be a vote this evening to decide whether the rebel bill can take place tomorrow. So we sort of find out whether it's going to be possible, and then tomorrow we're going to find out if there really are the numbers and if something can be passed which prevents Boris Johnson from taking Britain out on no deal without Parliament's say, and crucially will lead to an extension of the Brexit negotiations.
Okay. What I was looking for was a 3-minute rebel pitch at 6:30.
There you go.
This evening is what's going to happen. What do you think will happen as a result of that, Tom?
Well, I think what we're going to see today is an incredibly close vote. It'll be really, really exciting to watch because the numbers is really on the line. We've got maybe 13 Tory rebels that are willing to vote to take over that order paper from the government tomorrow, which means that Remainers in Parliament can propose legislation, something that's normally left to the government. It's almost a coup, if you want to be dramatic about it. And then, if they're successful in that, they'll propose legislation that we saw break late last night that would mean that the government would be compelled to ask the EU for an extension. And we'd have to accept the EU's terms on that. It would really neuter the government. In many ways, it would be a surrender document that our government would have to sign up to. And so, understandably, this is going to be a very tight vote because there are a lot of Remainers who, just a few months ago, were really willing to sign up to legislation to stop no deal, who are now taking a step back and thinking, actually, I'm not going to sign up to this. People like Caroline Spellman, who proposed an amendment, actually, just a few months ago to stop no deal, is now saying she'll vote with the government. So things are absolutely on a knife edge.
He's being optimistic, isn't he?
Well, I mean, he said that it was a surrender document, but in fact, there is a sort of a January deadline, but then it's up to the government to say if they want it to be longer or shorter. The EU can propose we want a longer extension or a shorter one, but nothing happens unless Parliament agrees to that. So I think,
it's not up to the government. The
it's
bill
up to Parliament.
removes...
And can we just say something here? That the irony of all of this, the referendum was about taking back control for Parliament
And
over
the bill
here.
would give it to Brussels.
No, it would give it to Parliament.
No, it
gets
wouldn't.
to
There'd
decide.
be no agency of Parliament. Parliament
there
would be able
would.
to say yes or no.
Yes.
But that yes or no would have no agency. It would be accept the EU's conditions or leave on no deal.
Well,
and if Parliament has said it doesn't want no deal, it would be blindly accepting whatever proposals the EU gave. That could be an indefinite extension. That could be any number of proposals that are really damaging for our country. It's weakening the executive, it's weakening the United Kingdom, and it's deeply damaging. And it means it's going to prevent us from getting a good deal that can pass through Parliament and mean that we can get on with the rest of our lives. This is going to keep us debating Brexit and stuck in this quagmire for months and months and years to come.
I think the ultimate point is Parliament gets to decide what happens, and that is what you and all the people that campaigned to leave wanted. Parliament gets to say, do we want an extension? Do we want no deal? Rather than Boris Johnson saying, I'm scared of what Parliament's going to do, I want no deal, I'm scared they're going to stop me, so I'm just going to shut it down. And that, to me, isn't democracy.
This is so disingenuous. We're hearing that people proposing a second referendum are now saying that we shouldn't have a general election because they quite like this dysfunctional Parliament. They know that this Parliament's probably the best.
Say it.
Well, it's exactly what they're saying. People like Tony Blair said just yesterday that we shouldn't have a general election. He wants to keep this horrible Parliament that no one really likes in place so that we can stay in this weird stasis area where nothing can really be done. That's what Remainers want. They want to keep us clogged down in this horrible situation where we've got 1,000,001 flags behind us and people shouting at us on the news. This is the situation that has been created by people not accepting democratic referendum results. And only if we keep no deal on the table can we then credibly negotiate, get that good deal that can pass through Parliament, leave at the end of October and get on with our lives.
Is that really why Remainers and Labour voters, Labour MPs want to stay in the status quo for now?
No, and I think I would absolutely challenge they don't want to stay in the status quo. Everybody wants to see a resolution. You ask Philip Hammond or David Gauke, they wanted to leave but with a deal. There are some people who want a referendum for sure, but don't blanket everybody in the same way. And I'd say the reason that they don't trust Boris Johnson on a general election is that he could decide to hold it after Britain has left on no deal. And so of course MPs aren't going to vote blindly to say, yes, of course you can have a general election and you can decide and you can take us out on no deal. It's perfectly credible.
That's disingenuous, because if this law passes tomorrow, that would mean it would be illegal for the UK to leave with no deal, and that would mean that the Prime Minister wouldn't be able to schedule the election for after the exit date. So really, what Remainers are trying to do in Parliament is find any excuse to not have an election, because they know they would lose. Boris Johnson has, depending on which pollster you look at, between a 9 and 11 point lead above the Labour Party. It looks like if we were going to have a general election anytime soon, the Conservatives would come in with a thumping majority. And that's really what Remainers don't want to see. They don't want to subject their points to the electorate.
But Lucy's point, I think I'm right in saying, is that if the Prime Minister calls for a general election and the rest, or two-thirds of those in the House, agree to it, then he could set a date of the 14th of October, but change it unilaterally to after the 31st of October.
Not if this law tomorrow is passed, because that would mean it would be illegal for the UK to leave the European Union or at the end of October, because it would make no deal illegal, because it would compel the Prime Minister to seek that extension. So the Prime Minister wouldn't be able to set that election date after the end of October without breaking the law if this bill passes tomorrow.
And then at which point they would vote for a general election. It's not.
Well, that's the situation that Boris is saying, that there might be a general election if this law passes. I think it's game playing really for the Labour Party.
But the first priority of all of those people is to stop no deal. That is number one. That is to pass this legislation to stop no deal from happening, and then, if necessary, a general election. I think it's wrong of you to suggest that people want this stasis. They want to prevent no deal. And by the way, can you tell me at what point during the referendum campaign anybody said, if you vote to leave, we're leaving with no deal? Because I
can tell you
nobody said that.
The very good Sky News debate where Faisal Islam interviewed the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister came back at him and said what would happen over this course of the 2-year negotiation period. He says, I can quote him almost word for word, you have 2 years to negotiate, and at the end of that, you're out and you have to operate under World Trade Organization terms. Almost direct
He
quote
absolutely
from
didn't.
He absolutely didn't. Well, I'm looking forward to showing you on Twitter that he did later on.
Good for you. Excellent. Because Vote Leave had a big manifesto about the trade deal and how we would leave. Every single member of the Vote Leave team, Boris Johnson, Michael Gove, and all the rest of them, said this is what a deal would look like, and these are the terms of trade.
And this is now, we are where we are. If there is a claim for a call for a general election and there isn't one, where does that then leave Boris?
That leaves... So there are two things here. If there's a call for an election and Labour MPs try and block it, I think at first it will be proposed to be that sort of, under the terms of the Fixed Terms Parliament Act, 2/3 of Parliament needing to vote for an election. But if that fails, there's something that the government can do, which is to propose a different kind of bill that would say, notwithstanding the Fixed Terms Parliament Act, the next election will be on X date, and the rest of the Fixed Term Parliament Act can apply in the future, because Parliament can change the law with just simple majorities. Supermajorities don't really work if you propose new legislation. So he could propose a new election under a simple majority like that, and that's much more likely to pass. I think it would be really quite silly of any member of Parliament to say, I'm going to refuse an election at the risk of one happening. I think that would be a hard case to go back to their electorate and say, oh, I didn't want you to vote because I knew that I might lose, or anything like that. That really takes a lot of the wind out of their sails. So I think just in basic logic terms, they're likely to vote for an election. And if they don't, then we're in an even worse situation than we're experiencing now, whereby you have a parliament that doesn't agree with its executive, but is unwilling to change its executive, an impotent executive that can't do anything at all, and parliament that keeps trying to push around the executive with no one really getting anyone's way at all. It's a mess. It's a total and utter mess. And so
we all agree on that.
The clear way to sort something out is to keep no deal on the table, negotiate a good deal, and leave at the end of October. If that doesn't happen, an election is clearly what needs to happen.
Well, Boris Johnson yesterday said, I don't want an election, and nor do you want an election. So I think if it seems to me like a lot of it is designed that his hands will be forced and he can say, oh dear, none of it's my fault.
Is that not a double bluff?
We're going to find out. I think he wants for it to be everybody else's problem and not his, that whatever happens, if we end with no deal, if we end with an election, it was all forced upon him and he didn't really
Looks as though he's been outfoxed for now, though, doesn't it? He thought he had all the cards and not necessarily.
I'm not sure. Let's wait for tonight. I think the vote will be closer than people are
I'm sure
expecting.
he adores your optimism.
I'm perpetually optimistic. How can you not be? I mean, otherwise you'd be in a profoundly miserable state in times like these. But if that vote does go against the government, then we're heading for election territory. I don't think the Prime Minister wants an election. Not many people in number 10 do. It's hard for the Conservative Party to win an election, another election, where 3 years on from the referendum we still haven't left the EU. That's a hard pitch to say, just one more time, let us get this done, because people are sick and tired of it. But if it has to happen, it has to happen. And I think that's the message that the Prime Minister was trying to put out last night.
Final thought, Lucy?
Well, I think, I mean, let's see what everybody's made of. I think that's what we're about to find out. I think the Labour Party have some really difficult decisions to make. I think, as you say, I agree entirely. Boris Johnson doesn't have all the cards that he thought he did. And I think if he is stopped from holding a general election, they're going to have to really think seriously about what comes next.
Okay, it's good to speak to both of you. Lucy, forgive me for the start of the interview. It's an absolute pleasure to finally meet you, and you, sir. Absolutely. Come and see us soon. Take care. Thanks very much indeed. So I'm going to read it from my notes this time. 3-minute rebel pitch to try to take control of tomorrow's session is at 6:30 this evening. We're covering it for you here on Sky News.